You only really get one opportunity to build a house. And if you stuff it up, you can say, well, I'll sell it and move on, but it's somebody else's problem then. So I think it's really, really important to get the design right. And I'm so glad we had a long time to do that. We really had a lot of time to think about it.
The glazing that you've selected, what did you end up doing for your windows?
Yeah, we've gone for UPVC double glazing. Again, UPVC doesn't rust, doesn't corrode in the coastal thing. And yeah, they're great.
And were you able
They're
to source
amazing.
those
They're
locally?
so heavy. In Perth, yes.
Yeah.
We found someone in Perth that's got a really good reputation for doing good. And the price of them has come down a lot. From when we started designing, when double glazing was really expensive, a lot of people were importing it directly from China to cut costs. Nowadays, it's actually not too bad. I mean, we did cut down on the number of windows to meet that budget because it is expensive. And it was one of the things I was quite nervous about because I had cut down on the amount of glazing. And I was thinking, have we got enough? So it has to be dark and pokey because, it's lovely to have all these big windows. But it made us very intentional about the windows. I said, every window has to be there for a reason. And the size has to be rationalized. Why are we having it the size? Why is this window here? Okay, it's to capture this view, it's to bring light in, it's to bring winter sun in. So it's to cross ventilate. So every window was very, very intentional, and the size was very intentional. So it made us think really carefully about the windows. And so once the house got to lock up, that was the stage for great trepidation, going to inspect it and going, oh, are there enough windows? And we were so relieved, going, yeah, it looks good. It frames the bush, it lets the sun in. Everything worked out really well. So we were super happy about the windows.
Oh, that sounds brilliant, June. And such a worthwhile rationalization from a budget point of view to be so intentional about what the job that they needed to do and to make sure that you weren't just sort of mindlessly adding them for the sake of it, but actually testing that. The PHPP modeling, how did the consultant do some PHPP modeling for you, or did you still just stick with a NatHERS energy efficiency assessment to sort of see the energy efficiency of the home? How did you work that sort of input of information through your decision making?
Okay, so for the actual design, there's a government website which I used a lot in guiding the design for passive solar and passive cooling. So maximizing your north-facing windows, minimizing the south-facing windows. We've only got one window on the west side, but I did want that window because that's the approach to the house. And it's, if you hear a car arriving, you want to be able to look out a window and see people coming. So for me, that window was really important. So I made it not too big, and we're going to have to put some sort of external shading on it. So, and then on the east side, we've got the windows. That's the main outlook on the east side, looks towards the bush. And so we had quite big windows on that side, but we've got it shaded with a deep veranda. So we've got a 3-meter wide veranda there, which gives really nice shade over those quite big windows. So that was with the windows. We went for a 60-centimeter eave, which is what we were recommended to go for. Having been here through autumn, I would say that in autumn it's actually really hot and too much sun comes in those north-facing windows in autumn. And it was really interesting talking to our neighbour because she'd used very similar principles on building her house. And she said, yeah, we're getting too much sun in in autumn. It's good in spring. And so it's this problem, with the autumn is hotter than spring. So you want the sun in spring and you don't want so much in autumn. And the only way really to get around that is to have some sort of versatile external shading. So we're going to put some sort of something over the windows that you can roll up and down, basically, with like a shade mesh. Yeah, so
like an external
we can
blind of some
control
sort.
that. Yeah, because there's no way to do it completely passively, and get those angles right because obviously, it's this problem with spring versus autumn here.
Yeah.
I presume it's the same on the East Coast. It's on the West Coast, you get really hot autumns compared to spring.
It
Spring
can
here's
be.
cold.
Yeah, it can be, definitely. And I think that's the thing, as long as you can create a solution that has some flexibility to it, motorized external blinds are a really great option, be it a fabric one that is a dark shade blind, because it'll still, when it's down, be able to be seen through. So the darker the color, the more transparent it ends up being visually. And also has, sort of high solar protection coefficients on it and things like that. And then, if you can get it motorized so that it's attached to a switch control on the inside, then that can be really handy for you. They've got wind sensors on them. The other option is but it's probably not suitable given the coastal location, is that you can get like a motorized aluminium. They're like a high grade, basically external Venetian blind, but much, they've got nice sort of scalloped blades and elliptical sort of blades, and they can stay down and rotate in position as well as be up and down. So you can have them down and rotate them based on what the sun angles are to provide that shade, and then also just have them disappear both out of view. But I think that the sunshade blinds will be a much more economical solution than the metal ones, and obviously for a coastal location, they're probably going to be a little bit more resilient as well. So they can definitely
Yeah, and I'm not sure how resilient the motorized option would be. That's something we've still got to look at. So in Perth, our house, we had the wind out ones where they come out at an angle. And the problem with those is that when it's windy, they just bang around. So when you've got strong wind, you have to put them away. So they wouldn't work so well here. I'm looking more at the ones that have a channel and they just run straight down next to the window so the wind can't catch them. Because it's windy here all the time, which is great for us windsurfers, but not so great for the house. Yeah, and also thinking about the bushfire thing, like you probably wouldn't want to go for something that would burn badly. Something just melts and falls off is okay.
Yeah.
But you probably wouldn't want canvas or something. It would probably.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, it'd be really nice to have timber shutters, and but I think then you've got to go for specific types of timber that aren't going to catch fire. It gets complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, balancing the bushfire, the corrosion, the wind, the sand. Because we're very close to the beach. We're only 500 meters from the beach. The sand's flying everywhere.
Yeah. Fantastic for lifestyle though. So you just need to make your home super hardy for it, don't you? So, which sounds like you've been definitely keeping that in mind. So, and so maybe if we have a chat about construction, because I can imagine if you were obviously thinking about the passive house principles in the design process, did you then look at doing blower door tests and things like that to test the air tightness as you were navigating construction? How and was the builder somebody that was used to, like, had an understanding of passive house and air tightness? How did you marry all of that together in terms of the execution of the actual build?
Yeah, so our builder is passive house certified. I'm not sure if he's built a full passive house yet. He's quite a new builder. He's a small builder. We were a bit concerned going with a small builder because it's a high risk, it's a new business, he doesn't have a big reputation. But in the long run, I think that was actually lower risk than going with these established big companies who are overcommitting themselves, basically. Whereas he was managing it very carefully because he's a small builder. And the other thing is he's still trying to build his reputation. So he's very anxious to do a really good job. Whereas the big companies a bit like, everyone's coming to us, we don't have to worry so much. So in hindsight, it was a really good decision to go with a small builder. He's been really good. He's been great communication, and he's been great to build with. And he's from Italy. He was a civil engineer, which also appealed to me. I thought, I like the idea of an engineer building my house because he's going to have a better understanding of structure and things. So that worked out really well.
Did he do a blower door test as he was moving
through? So we talked about the blower door test because we decided not to go full passive house. And blower door test is expensive to come all the way up here. Everything that gets expensive because there's travel and if it takes more than a day, it's accommodation and things. We decided to forego the blower door test and not do that. We thought, it doesn't have to be perfect passive house here because of the mild climate. It's not like it's a really extreme climate. If anything, it's going to be too hot, I guess, rather than too cold. So we decided not to go that way. We'll just try and build it as well as possible. So that was one of the things that we did make the effort to come up and inspect. Was once they'd done the wrap and the tape, we came up and made sure it was properly taped, that every hole was taped over. And we did have to keep an eye on some of the trades, like local trades like the plumbers and the electricians aren't familiar with passive house, and so we had to keep saying to them, "Oh, you can't put that hole there, and you can't put a hole, and you can't cut a big hole in the insulation here." And we had to keep explaining to them that the style of this house was that everything had to be really well sealed. After they put all their holes in, we had to go back and tape everything. And we insulated the sides of the slab as well. And when the electrician had to put a hole in, he had to cut through the slab to get the electrical cables in. Then they had to go back and re-insulate that side of the slab there where he had to cut away and things like that. So yeah, you have to be, because passive house is such a new thing, you have to be really watching what people are doing and making sure they're adhering to that. Because we did, when we were designing the house, we spoke to a few people. We were put onto some people to look at their houses. So for example, one woman was built a house of SIPs, and she let us come and look at her new build, and it was great. People are fantastic about showing you their houses. We found you could knock on the doors. "We love your house. Can we see it?" And people go, "Yeah, come on in." Oh, it's amazing. and the trades have done some terrible things. The electrician had put this huge hole in the SIPS panel, and just, that's not the way you're meant to do it. You're meant to pre-melt really nice, neat holes, and it's all really good. You're not meant to cut the polystyrene on site. It's meant to all cut in the factory. And I just looked at this and I thought, oh my goodness, yeah, you do have to be really careful, because people don't know how to deal with these new materials. They don't know how to deal with the new ideas. So you do have to be watching them. And that's why it's really hard building remotely, because we couldn't watch everything that was going on all the time.
Great though that the builder was obviously passive house trained, because at least then you've got a great big leg up in them understanding the principles and the importance of that air tightness. Are you doing a mechanical recovery ventilation system in it?
Yes, we've got a heat recovery ventilation system. I think that's going to be commissioned next week. So they've got all the ducting done, and they've just got to put in the vents and do the balancing and make sure it works properly. That's going to be really interesting, because, one of the things you love about nature is we can hear the ocean, we can hear the birds, and you get in that house and you shut all the windows and it's just dead silent. You can't hear a thing. And we're thinking, maybe we'll just open the windows so we can hear the birds. Because, it's just so quiet with the double glazing, and you'll never have to open a window because you got the ventilation.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something really different to what we're used to, living in a house where you just open everything all the time, unless it's really hot and you want to have the air conditioner on. We're used to just opening everything up and enjoying nature. So it's going to be very different being insulated from the outside. But we have the option at any time we can open it.
Exactly. And mind you, when it's very windy and the sand's all flying around, or it's 45 degrees outside, then it'll probably be very appreciated that you can close the windows and still be comfortable and get fresh air.
Oh yeah, in this house we're staying, our friend's house we're staying in the moment, it's a traditional old beach cottage, and there's louvers, and the house is just dirty all the time. There's always dust and sand, and everything's full of salt and stuff. So I think it will really help the cleaning of the house if we can just seal it. You won't get all that sand and dirt and dust in it. It'd be nice, because I don't want to spend my retirement cleaning a house.
That's very wise.
The last thing I want to do.
No, well, I'm thinking, we live on acreage and our house is open most of the time. There's windows open. And as a result, yeah, you do have, not every window is screened. So you do end up having, sort of insects coming in and, spiders' webs and dust on floors and things like that. So it's very different than when you're living in an environment where there's a fair bit more concrete around and, everything's sort of tamped down a lot more. So it's going to be, I'm really excited to see what it's like for you living in that kind of experience. And I suppose being able to moderate it, that's the whole premise, isn't it? That you get to have control. You actually get to have a say about,
exactly.
When you do decide to open it up to all of the elements, hear all of that sound, the weather, all of those kinds of things, and then choose to close it down should the need arise. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes for you in terms of changing your experience in your home.
Yeah, it'll be really different. And I think, those lovely autumn days when it's still and it's beautiful, you just open it up and enjoy the outside.
Yeah.
That's another interesting thing is, with the double glazing and the European style double glazing, the windows are these tilt and turn. So the windows open inwards, and because they're quite big, most of our windows, except for the bathroom ones. So you have to actually design the interior room so there's somewhere for the window to open to, because you're used to having sliding windows or windows open outwards, and you never have to think about what's inside of the window. So you actually had to think which way is it going to swing? It's not going to hit bits of furniture or stuff like that, which is something I don't think we normally think about. And then it'd be terrible if you designed it and then you couldn't actually open your window because stuff was always in the way. So yeah, especially with those they have bedroom windows where we've split it 50-50 and they're quite nice big windows. Half it's fixed and half it opens. You think, oh, this is just going to sweep over the top of the furniture. Yeah. So there's
Yeah,
a
no,
lot of
that's a
things
very
to
good
think
point.
about the tilt and turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can always just do the tilt, which is quite nice
Yeah.
as well.
The benefit of those tilt and turns is obviously that you get to clean them from the inside as well. You're not having to stand around the outside of your house to clean those windows, which is a really good asset of that design.
Yeah, and if you can't take the screens off, like our previous house, we actually had to pull the windows out and put them on the floor to wash the back of the windows if there were screens on the other side. Yeah, which is a pain.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that as you're getting older. It's right when you're young. No, those aging in place things.
I love it. The future proofing, thinking about how easy this home is going to be maintained and clean, is a very, very wise one. So, so that you're not spending a fortune getting people around to do that over the duration of living in your home. Now, I wanted to ask. You've mentioned obviously along the way managing your budget, making decisions that were driven obviously by figuring out how you're going to balance the costs of the project, and also navigating hiccups and hurdles along the way as well, because you had, as you said, that owner of that business passing away, having to change the construction methodology. How did you navigate this yourself? How did you tap it into the resources of home method, navigate it from a mental point of view, manage your stress through all of that? In terms of, because no project is hiccup free. It's a custom home. It's the first time it's ever been built on this site. So these things do happen. Obviously, your ability to handle them makes the difference to how it impacts your life and your project. Can you, I suppose, share some tips and advice with listeners about what you did to set yourself up to navigate this and it be okay in terms of how you were moving through?
Yeah, well, I'm really glad that we took a long time to design the house. To my mind, that was the most important thing, because you only really get one opportunity to build a house. And if you stuff it up, you can say, well, I'll sell it and move on, but it's somebody else's problem then. So I think it's really, really important to get the design right. And I'm so glad we had a long time to do that. We really had a lot of time to think about it and exactly. And there were a couple of ideas I used to plan that. And one of them I call scenario planning, which is you just imagine things you do every day. So I think, okay, I come home from the shops with the groceries. Where am I going to park the car? How am I going to pack them? How do I navigate to the kitchen? I don't want to have a contorted path from the car to the kitchen. If it's really hot, will I be parking undercover? If it's raining, will I be parking undercover? Hanging out the washing, I've done the washing. How do I get to the washing line? Ordinary everyday things like that. And then there's also the things that are special, to you and your lifestyle. So because we'll be at the beach and maybe we've been surfing and you come back and you're wet and you're sandy, where are you going to wash off? Where are you going to wash down? And, where are you going to wash out your wetsuit? Where are you going to hang it out? And so we did a lot of the scenario planning, even to the point of like, I get up in the middle of the night and I have to go to the toilet. How far do I have to go? Am I going to trip over things? Is the toilet really close to the bedroom? Whereas in our previous house, you'd have to go up and down stairs for a lot of things because it was a double story, and that was a pain. And so we did a lot of thinking about, because I sleep really badly, so I'll often get up in the night and go to the kitchen. So if I want to go into the kitchen, then I have to think about the lighting, because I don't want it to be really bright. So I want dimmer switches in certain places so that, I go and I turn on dim, I can make myself a cup of tea and then go back to bed. So there was a lot of this, how will we move around the house? That was this thinking about the different scenarios that you go through on a day-to-day basis, and we've got a little dog, and, if the weather's bad and you want to exercise indoors, it's nice to have a hallway. You can throw the ball up and down the hallway. With pets, I know with children, when we were children, we loved having hallways in a house because they're major play areas when the weather's bad. You chase the pets up and down the hallways and you throw balls up and down the hall. So thinking about, how are you going to do your data activities? How are you going to move around the house? That was really, really useful. And in terms of actually construction of the house, I actually made a scale model of the house out of poster board.
Love
And
it.
the first house, when I tried to do the roof, I thought, oh my goodness, this is really complicated. This is a really bad design. And I didn't. And then came back to a much, and I think if I can make it out of poster board, they can build it easily. That's the way I was thinking. And if it's too hard to make out of poster board, it's going to be horrible to build. And you're going to have all these awful things. So I think those two things just really, really helped me come up with a design that was going to work and that was going to be good to build, easy to build, and it's going to and it's going to really work really well. So that was really good. And then I think because there's two of us, I think that really helps. You can bounce ideas off each other. I think you really need someone to talk to. You go, oh, what do you think of that? Because there's a lot of decisions you make yourself, but then there's other decisions that you're really not sure, and it's good to have someone to talk through. So I think it's really good to have people you can talk ideas through with, and even just friends, and even if they have no idea what you're talking about, even just having to express it to them really helps you get your ideas in order. So I think things like that are really helpful. I'm finding as much information as you can, like obviously on your website, there's this government website that they've updated it since we started. Like it was pretty primitive when I was first designing, they didn't have much there on like passive ideas at all, but they've really improved that a lot now. It's really good. It's got lots of nice, simple ideas explained really simply. So that's really great. And YouTube is another excellent source of information. Like finding out about passive house stuff and all the wraps and stuff. There's a builder in New Zealand who does these excellent YouTube videos showing exactly how he builds a passive style house. And that was just fantastic. So stuff like that, which really gets into the nitty gritty of how houses are built. And then when you understand, it's like, when you drive a car, you can get in a car and just drive it. But if you understand how a car works, you can be a much better driver. I think if you understand how people build, you can design a better house because you're taking into mind how it works structurally. And I think, the more information you get, the better. Obviously, I was working full time then. And so, you're balancing, I don't have time to work. And it gets really stressful, especially when someone comes to, the builder comes to you with a question. You think, oh, I don't have time to look at this. And you go, can I tell you next week? I need the weekend to do it. And they want an answer now. And you go, I can't tell you till Monday because I need the weekend to think about it. And sometimes you do rush through decisions, especially, towards the end when the small cascading kind of decisions. And I think the biggest mistake what we made was we decided to do our carport and veranda using the Stratco. And we got that up, and then they're going, oh, how are you going to do the lights? Because there's no ceiling space, because it's a polystyrene sandwich. There's no ceiling space. So we talked to Stratco and they said, oh, we've got our system doing it. But already we were too far down the track to integrate it properly. And so, they've got a system which is meant to be really streamlined, but because it was sort of like an ad hoc decision and it hadn't been thought through carefully, and we hadn't read all the information properly, we haven't done a good job of that. And I think that was the one thing we find most frustrating was those Stratco light system, was because if we designed it from the start, we would have designed it properly and understood how to do it and read all the information, but it was kind of done on this ad hoc basis. And there was a few times we were just pulling our hair out, where do the transformers for the lights go? We haven't cut the right size holes. We can't take it down now, it's there. And so now it's our poor electrician's problem. We're just going, it's your problem. And at some point, I tend to take problems on board. I go, we've got to solve this. And I've been telling myself, no, I don't have to solve this. It's their problem. That's what they pay to do. They have to solve it. Whereas I tend to always think, oh, this is our problem. And then I think, no. At some point, you've got to hand that problem over to someone else and say, do your best. Just do your best. And I'm going to stand back and let you do your thing. And it's quite hard to let go sometimes.
It can definitely be. And I think it's a really good point to make. And, because we can take far too much ownership of those things and forget that there's a team in place, that it is their role and responsibility. And actually, from a risk management point of view, you're much better placed to ensure that it's their role and responsibility to solve these things for you, so that you're not over owning the responsibility of these decisions in your project. But I think that just comes with being informed about this stuff, that when you actually do, you dive into things like Home Method and the other research that you were doing, and you see how much there is to know to do it well, And yet you realize that most people are walking through their projects without this level of information. And most teams are not used to having clients that have this level of education, that you are just wanting to make sure that you're dotting all your T's and crossing all your I's and getting it done. So I can understand that the carport would have been a frustration for you, because you would have gone, oh, we should have anticipated this. We should have known that, we should have, and at the same time, a company like Stratco has a very systemized, efficient way of delivering for a reason, because it's what keeps them economical. And so, what I love is that only happened on your carport. It didn't happen on your entire house, and it could have happened on your house but it didn't, because you chose to get yourself educated and informed about it. So, yeah, whereas a lot of people have that happen on their entire house, so that's the experience that they have for their entire house. So yeah, it's really awesome. Can I just ask you quickly about the builder and navigating that remotely? You've only been living, obviously he's been operating since September on your site. You've only been living there for the last little while. How have you navigated the communication and sort of understanding what was going on site, so you had some certainty and confidence that things were going as they needed to, without you needing to be there doing a regular site meeting and having and inspecting site yourself to sort of see how things were going? How did that work out in your project?
Yeah, so we chose critical times when we decided these is when we want to make sure things are done properly. So yeah, the insulation and the building wrap were really important to us to get that done properly, because that's something you can't come back, right? We say some things you can come back and fix, some things you can't. So it was really important deciding on those. In the initial stages, the builder took some drone footage and a whole lot of photos, and we set up a share site on Google Docs, and he put everything there. So that was great to see that initial build go up, the slab go in, and all the walls and the wrap and stuff. So that all went in. And yeah, and then I think there was a bit of a break where the other trades were coming in and things were getting a bit complicated. And we just thought, well, we'll stand back and let this happen. And then got to lock up, obviously had a look at lockup. We're happy with everything. And then because we're getting very close to the end now, and we're thinking, well, there's little bits and pieces that we could see that we weren't thinking, what about this? What about this? And because we didn't have that expertise, we didn't really know, because the painter's coming up from Perth and we wanted everything to be right before the painter came up. And there were gaps and things we were worried about, the bushfire compliance gaps. And we're going, well, we can sit down and do all this. And we made a list and sent it to the builder, but we didn't know what was important and what wasn't. And we were feeling really uncertain. So in the end, we decided to bring in a building inspector. And the building inspector is also a bushfire rating person. So that was great. So he could check it for the bushfire compliance and the building inspection. And that was just really, we're so glad we did that. It was great. The builder came up to site for the day when the guy was there, and they went around. And because he was a new builder, he was super enthusiastic to learn. So he was really open-minded about the inspection, was really interested in what the guy would find. And so that was a really good day where we all went around and the building inspector showed us things. And one of the really good things, he had a little thermal camera, and he actually found one section where the carpenters had forgotten to put the insulation in the wall. Like there was this big going, there's no window there, but it's red.
Yes.
So that was really great that we managed to cut that out, and they put some stuff in before the painter started. Because if you'd done it after the painter would have had to come back up. And it was interesting because once he pointed out, you could put your hand on the wall and you could feel it, because it was on the north wall. And of course, now the sun at this time of year is hitting the north wall, and you could just feel the heat coming through on that one section where there wasn't insulation. So that was great. And he went through, like there were a lot of places, on the exterior where we had to fill in gaps for the bushfire compliance. That was the main thing. And most of the other stuff was just, it was just stuff that the paint was going to fill in anyway. So it was just touch up. Wasn't anything we had to worry about. But you don't know when you go, what's this gap and what's this gap and why is this not smooth, and they've chipped it here, and they go, that doesn't matter, we just covered them. And we just cut back straight and we just put a few more screws in. So none of it was major. It was great. It was really nice to know, like the inspector said, look, on the whole, it's really well built. This is way better than most houses I look at, inspect at this stage. So we were both going, oh, this is such a worthwhile exercise to do. It's put our minds at rest. We know everything was minor. They came up and they fixed everything. And it only took them a couple of days to fix most of the stuff that needed doing. So yeah, that was just great. We're really glad we got that done. I would highly recommend if people are worried and not sure about their own ability to judge how the house is going, to get someone in and just give them that peace of mind that things have gone right. It was actually quite funny because about the time we were doing it, you put out that email about with a link to someone's house being inspected.
Yeah. I remember
And
that with
before the
the, yeah.
inspector came up, yeah, I was watching
Yeah.
that going, oh my goodness, really
Yeah, there's an
terrifying.
inspector on YouTube that does videos of terrible house like he's inspecting houses that are just diabolical. So yes, did you use the pre-completion checklist that's in Home Method at all? Did you use that to guide some of that kind of initial review?
No, I haven't. But that will be the next step. So I think because we were going to do a pre-completion thing, and then we thought, no, that's bad timing because that's too late. We need it done now before the painter goes in. So that's why we've done this now. So then the next step will be the pre-completion
Awesome.
checking, yeah, to make sure all that is right. But we're pretty confident it's going to be fairly minor stuff. You know, it's mostly at this stage, I think now we know that construction-wise it's great. So now it's all really cosmetic stuff.
It's
So that's good to
fantastic.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
June, before we wrap up, are you able to share how you used Home Method and how it helped you? You mentioned obviously checking interviewing the builder and that kind of stuff. You obviously took a process that, our members inside Home Method do their projects all sorts of different ways. So obviously, you described that you had an architect do the initial design, then you redesigned it, then you went to the builder, had their draftsperson draw it up. So it's great because you're a living example of a different approach to that traditional sort of working with an architect, construction documentation, or the pack process. And it's it's turned out really well for you in terms of your ability to choose your team really well and then being informed through that process. How has Home Method helped you navigate your project, and where you particularly used it to give you the tools that you needed to make good decisions as you move through your project journey?
I think we used it mostly near the beginning. It was very much about informing ourselves about the process, what happens when you build, and I hate going into things when I don't understand what I'm doing, that feeling of, is this right? Is this wrong? You don't have any way to judge. So it was really nice to have the knowledge there to just go into that process, ask the right questions, and have the confidence that you could make good decisions because they're based on knowledge rather than guessing. A lot of times I feel like you don't know what questions, people ask questions, but you don't know what questions to ask. You go to the doctor and they tell you, oh, you've got this. Any questions? And you sit there going, I don't know. Tell me what questions I should be asking. And it's the same with this. You just don't know what questions to ask. So you need knowledge to actually be able to ask sensible and useful questions. So that was really, really useful. I'm the sort of person that tends to blitz things. So when I got into home editor, I got a request to get into everything early, and I just went through everything. You tend to, I'm a bit of a sponge. I just absorbed everything early, and so I just sucked it all up and then started the planning process. So I was even looking at interior design, and I think it's important to do that because you if you come to do your interior design later and then you find what you've done isn't compatible, then it's too late. So I think it's really important to think about your interior design when you're actually designing where the walls are. Things like, one of my pet hates is corner cupboards in kitchens. I hate corner cupboards in kitchens.
You and me both.
And so we specifically designed the kitchen so there's no corner cupboard. So things like that you can do very early on. You can say, I'm going to put the walls like this. And so there's no way I'll have a corner cupboard in this kitchen. And things like that. So in that way, it was really nice just to go through your entire course really quickly as my first pass. And then later on we could go, okay, we'll go back to this bit and we'll go back to that bit and learn a bit more about this or that thing. So I found, having the entire course there rather than having to do one thing and then the next and then.
Oh, I think you've done an exceptional job. So, listening to your conversation and hearing you talk about like that scenario planning, which we obviously talk about being that design detective and thinking through how you want to live in your future home, right through to all of those daily detail things and then the special events and then, really mentally rehearsing all of that movement, all of that is just music to my ears because it's so much about that's the difference. That's what makes a functional, convenient, fun, enjoyable home that actually supports your lifestyle
Yes.
because you've thought it through and really made intentional considerations. And I think some people struggle going, well, say for example, I haven't lived in a house in this way before. So, we've obviously got members who've got small kids and they can't picture perhaps what it might be to live in a house with teenagers. So how do they then mentally rehearse what the house needs? And it's like, well, once you actually start opening your mind to seeing your life and your built environment that way, it's amazing then what shows up to give you clues about what you could need, what's going to work for you, and what you start to see. But if you've not even kind of, I suppose, invited yourself to have that perspective about your life and to study the way that you move through space and the way that you interact with things, and you're just going with the status quo of what you're being told you should have in a home, then it's very difficult to make decisions that are going to be tailored to you. And I love that you've gone through that cost assessment of what does our house, creating two big multifunctional rooms rather than trying to squeeze your budget around a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, and really made some very intentional choices that I'm sure are going to serve you very well as you move into this home. To wrap up, can you share with us what are you actually most excited about? Thinking, you're weeks away. What are you most looking forward to in moving into this home?
Oh, we just can't wait. It's going to be so nice to live in a house that suits us, that suits our lifestyle. And I guess one of the things that was a really big bonus about the house was that our energy efficiency rating, NATA's rating, came back as a 9.2 star, which just blew us
Talk
away.
about the mic drop at the end. That's amazing.
Because when we engaged the builder, I said, look, I want something that's 8-star, because that's what I'd read. 8-star is really good because when you go above that, you're spending a lot of extra money with smaller gains. I said, we want 8-star. And he said, yeah, no problem. And so when it came back at 9-star, we were just like, oh, my goodness, celebration. So yeah, from complete ignorance, you can train yourself to build a house that performs really well. So that was super exciting. We were so excited to get that. Yeah, but yeah, we just can't wait to have our own home and have it functioning really well and having all the things, living in rental houses thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have this? Wouldn't it be nice to have that? We'll finally have those things and a house that's low maintenance, really easy to clean. Yeah, because that's been really important, is the low maintenance side, because I don't want to spend my retirement doing maintenance either, as well as cleaning. There's much more fun things to do. And, a lot of these houses people build with lots of windows and complicated outline. It's a lot of maintenance, especially on the coast. So that's been a really high priority, to have a house that you can just live in without having to worry about all the boring stuff.
Oh, June, I can't thank you enough for the time that you've taken to share your project journey with us. I think it's been amazing to learn so much from you about the choices that you made and how you set yourself up to do this project really well. And yeah, I'm super excited for you and your partner to be, so close to moving in and being able to realize this dream for yourselves and have a home that's actually tailored for you after, as you say, living in so many houses that weren't. And I wish you the very, very best for moving and realizing, your everyday life in this beautiful location with this home that you've created. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of your knowledge and learnings with us. I know that the listeners will find it super helpful. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been really interesting. And thank you so much for all the information that you've shared with us. It's just fantastic. It's made such a difference.
Thanks so much, June.